Members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, all following this meeting via social media, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, to all a very good morning. I welcome you to the continuation of this public meeting of Parliament. This is public meeting number 9 for today, Tuesday, January the 14th, 2025. Of course, at this time, I welcome all of the members of the Council of Ministers who are here with us this morning. We have the Prime Minister, the Minister of VROMI, Minister of ECYS, we have the Minister of Finance, we have the Minister of TIAT, we have the Minister of VSR, and we are awaiting the arrival of the Minister of Justice. We have established members, a quorum of 12 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have not received any notices from members or on behalf of members prior to this meeting, and thus I ask if any member wishes to make a notification at this time. I don't see the need for such, so we can continue with the agenda point for today, which, as I mentioned, is a continuation of the public meeting number 9, which was started yesterday, and we dealt with the previous agenda points, the 3 previous agenda points for this meeting, and started with the handling of the draft budget for the country 2025. This, members of Parliament, is your incoming document number 371, and it is National Ordinance here at Parliament number 182. I want to mention once again that during this public meeting, I will allow the usage of interruptions, and this discretion to allow the interruptions is up to the President of Parliament, and thus I ask you to work along with me as we try to get as much as we can out of the interruption possibility, but at the same time in such a manner that the meeting still flows and especially the ministers have an opportunity to finish their thought, their answer, and before we go through the interruptions or too many interruptions at the same time. Let me put it that way. As I remind the members of Parliament that the intention of the interruption is brief remarks that members of Parliament feel they should make based on what a minister is saying. Of course, you can do so in order to seek clarification of something that has been said by a minister, to challenge assertions, so things that are said, if you wish to challenge them, and also to give additional information to something that might have been said or brought forward by the minister. But again, it is about the brevity of it and no long introductions if it is a question or an assertion. So as I mentioned, we will ensure that the interruptions allow the good flow of the meeting nevertheless, and we will exercise, I request that, parliamentary decorum in the meeting, no disorderly interruptions or offensive interruptions. Members will be allowed 3 interruptions per agenda point, and of course you know from where these interruptions are to be made. So we go over to the agenda point, and just briefly introduction to where we are right now. And the budget was received by Parliament on the 11th of December 2024, and we had central committee meetings on the 18th, 19th, and 20th of 2024. The necessary reports have been made, and based on the meetings of the Central Committee, was sent to the government, and we received from the government a so-called Nota naar aanleiding van het verslag. Members of Parliament are in possession of that complete report, so the questions and comments by members of Parliament in the final report, as well as the answers given by the government in their Nota naar aanleiding van het verslag. We also have received a memorandum of modification from the government, which is registered on the IS 447. This is government's own amendment to its draft budget. So we continue where we left off yesterday. All ministers have given the presentation of their ministry, and now today, of course, members of Parliament will be given the opportunity to pose their questions and comments on the draft budget 2025, and the ministers will thereafter answer the questions posed by members of Parliament. It is important to mention that the speaking time for the members of Parliament is 90 minutes in the first round and 45 minutes in the second round. We are expected to break for lunch from 1 to 2, and later in the evening another break will be from 6 to 6:30. And we hope that at 9 o'clock we can adjourn after having covered quite some ground. I hope we can cover quite some ground during the day of today. As I mentioned yesterday, it is the intention that we also for this meeting carry out what we call a list of commitments, toezeggingen, as made by the government ministers, and then anything promised in the meeting will be noted and followed up on from the Council of Ministers. So I think, members, that I have sufficiently introduced where we are right now. And according to the speakers list, this being a public meeting, members have to sign in to express their wish to speak to the topic. And I already have 2 members who have done so. And I wish to give the floor in first instance to MP Ludmila de Wever. MP de Wever, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chair. Thanks. Let me start over again. Good morning, everyone. I want to start off here today, Chair Lady, stating that, just because you are here, whether you're part of coalition, whether you're over there, doesn't mean that you defend everything at all costs. And what I mean by that, in the fact is, just like the Minister of Finance yesterday stated, that this is one of the most important tasks that we have as members of Parliament, is to review and approve the budget, because this is what allows the Council of Ministers to do their job, and everything else, every other entity related to it, to do their job for the people of this country. And given the importance of this document, I want to make sure that what we receive is updated and accurate. And once again, before we start, I wanted to make sure that the budget that we are going to approve will have all accurate figures. So again, I bring attention to the fact that in our uitgaven, we still have columns that are 2024 and not 2025 for the ones that we have to approve in this budget. I mentioned it in the Central Committee meeting, and it is still not corrected. When it comes to the concession agreements on the page of the specifications of it, making up the years, we still have 2023 and 2024. Again, I go back yesterday solely on the reports or the presentations that we received from the honorable ministers, and I will start off with the Ministry of Finance. The Minister of Finance noted that we live in an uncertain world, and that is absolutely correct. We cannot predict the future. But the one thing that we are in control of is what we present, that when we present things, that they are whole and complete. And what I am reviewing with the rest of the members of Parliament is not correction. We did not receive a document with whether it's the Excel. I understand that we cannot print this huge budget again, but normally what we do is when we come into a budget debate, we actually will get the changes made that are very simple changes, and those are not done. But I take note of the fact as well that the minister noted that we're focused on continuity. But when I review some of the presentation from the ministers, there's a lot of new things in there, but we're also talking about the fact that when the ministers came in, they told us the reality of this country. The reality of this country was that things are tight. So when we're talking about continuity, I expect continuity to be there. And just like the Minister of Finance said, I agree with her. It's not bleak, but we have to be realistic in what we are presenting for this current year, because we have to prepare after this year for what's happening with Enya. We also have to prepare for the fact that we urgently need the government to come in and save our utility company that has been mismanaged, or actually the right decisions wasn't taken in order to fix the issues we had. So we're basically going into more debt. That concerns me about the fact of, is there a long-term plan in place, while focusing on the fact that our 2025-year budget is supposed to be a stabilizing budget, but we have new things in there. And the reality is that yesterday, I must point out the fact that the Minister of Justice yesterday mentioned the reality that I was looking for. Because in the last 2 months, if anyone is living and paying attention to what is happening on this country, the two areas for me, if I was a council of ministers, to focus on is to say, you know what? Everyone's complaining about garbage. Everyone's complaining about the roads. Everyone's complaining about the safety of this country. If you want a successful place, the hardest thing to do right now, knowing that we are a tourism-based economy, the hardest thing right now, and actually the simplest thing, is to have a country that is clean and a country that is safe. And the consistency or the continuity that I would love to see is a council of ministers focused on just that. And if I had to make a decision or give a recommendation to the Council of Ministers, I would say focus on the issues that we are having complaints about. Focus on VROMI. Focus on justice. The Minister of Justice said, I don't have what I need to do the work. The Minister of VROMI also said, we keep fixing roads, but we don't handle the drainage issue, which is correct. So again, it's a budget of continuity, a stabilizing budget, but what I see is a lot of mixed match of a lot of new things happening, but we're not focusing on just maintaining the status quo, dealing with the reality that we need to see how we're gonna, cut a little bit of the expenses, of the frivolous spending, while we're trying to stabilize. But if you're bringing in new things, I don't understand how that happens. So it's a lot of contradictions. It's an absolute lot of contradictions that I know from the time we came in here to do an amended budget of 2024, we were heading in the right direction, because you know what we had to do? We had to take out $32 million of an unrealistic achievable revenue in the short term. But if we started out right, we need to continue on that right path of keeping things realistic. So I'm asking the Council of Ministers to focus on a very, very, very simple formula of keeping our country clean and keeping it safe, because we're a tourism economy. When you want to bring in new people here, remember the fact that that's going to be the complaint from everyone for a tourism-based economy. People talk about the traffic, they talk about the roads, they talk about the cleanliness, they talk about they don't feel safe. And honestly, priority set in. I also heard the word yesterday in the presentations that we're moving away from a silo operation, and what I appreciated hearing is this sort of cooperation happening across the ministries, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine, and that's what we want to do. But at the end of the day, the Council of Ministers needs to come together and say, who's our priority for the year? We're dealing with a new loan for GB. It's going to take a year before the generators are even in. I'm concerned about the fact that the focus is not on the priority urgent issues, which in my opinion, based on the presentation I received yesterday, is absolutely very much VROMI and justice. I continue. Hang on, I need a little bit of water, sorry. My question to the ministers, to make sure that it is very clear, is will you provide an amendment to the budget correcting the errors of 2024 to 2025. The only amendments that we received was from the Ministry of Education. If I am incorrect, someone can correct me during the course of this debate during the day. I take note of the fact that it was mentioned that the government will negotiate a debt swap with the Netherlands to talk about green energy, to move forward with green energy. But what I would like to know is the correlation of how that's going to be manageable within this year, if that's even on the books, considering the loan that we just took for diesel generators. Again, I will mention on page 82 of the Verleende concessies on the concessions from government-owned entities, I have nothing for any government-owned companies in 2025. And I will bring a little bit more attention of it to the issues that I have with columns not being correct in a budget. If we agreed on salary increases, for instance, for civil servants for 2025, they won't get it because the 2024 stuff is in there. And how would you expect people to actually take action on a column if it's not the correct column, if it's not the correct header on it? Because they can take any 2024, it'll be eeny, meeny, miny, moe of which one to do. It's a very simple thing, but it has a very big impact on the accuracy of the numbers that we're reviewing. I take note of the fact that the Prime Minister talked about BTP taking the lead on negotiating what relief can come to the people. And I actually acknowledge the fact that I'm happy that that is being done. My concern with that, with BTP, is the fact that, in my experience, BTP didn't really follow through on the priorities or their responsibilities when it came to TEL-M. Things was not reported. It was not reported in a timely manner. So my concern is that it's not going to, no one's watching BTP or have expectations of BTP. So I would love to hear from the Prime Minister, what exactly are we to expect from BTP? Because I have experience with them of not following through. And I know that there was some management changes in BTP, but I really want to understand how that works. And the reason I'm saying that is because I have mentioned with the Prime Minister, on the floor of Parliament, that we're incurring additional loans with GB that the government is going to take for the generators. And the stuff that happened at GB hasn't changed. So we're not holding the supervisory board accountable. We're not holding management accountable. We have management coming with no deliverables. And that is the responsibility of the Council of Ministers, is to hold everyone in line accountable the same way how we here, all 15 of us, have to hold the Council of Ministers accountable for the job that you're doing. But I need to hear something a little bit more that gives me more confidence of what exactly BTP will be doing in their role. Because I know that the Prime Minister and the ministers can't do everything alone, but BTP, are they experienced to do what you need them to do? Do they have the right, I guess, knowledge to do the work of even becoming a regulator? Because that has been the plan in the past for BTP to regulate energy. I just need to know what's coming from it. I have a brief question for the Minister of TEAT, because when we are told that we have a budget of continuity, a stabilizing budget, I also take note of the fact that I saw various projects that had already been ongoing from the Ministry of TEAT, but I want to have a little bit of comfort that if we're doing continuity, that we're very careful of maybe over-promising and under-delivering, because of the fact that, as the Minister of TEAT knows, because I've mentioned this to her about Heineken Regatta, are we okay with our regular festivities taking place like Heineken Regatta, like the Carnival? That's what I didn't see. I saw new things, I saw new plans, but I will remind everyone that this government is dealing, like they told us last year, with a tight budget. we had to make adjustments to this budget that cut 32 million. But what are we actively doing as a whole, and I'm talking Council of Ministers and members of Parliament, to make sure that we are cutting the stuff that maybe is considered luxury right now? Because at this point in my career where I am, it reminds me of COVID days, when the only people that were allowed to travel was actually the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister to sign off on loans that we needed to actually have the subsidies and to be able to survive COVID. So I want to know what's active about it, because we can't continue as is, because when the government was installed, they informed us we have no money. That's all I want to have reality happening here in an accurate budget, that everyone can get on board with the fact that 2025 is going to be a very hard year. But like the Minister of Finance said, it's not bleak. There is some hope because we have plans. I just need accurate information coming to me. That's it. I will mention again, the Minister of Justice yesterday had a very, very honest, a brutally honest presentation when, if I may paraphrase, said, how do we expect, I'm gonna paraphrase because the way I interpreted it was, how do we expect our country to be safe if we don't even have the tools we need to keep our country safe? Which means when you look at the report that we received, we're literally almost over 40% understaffed in our justice system. And I'm talking about our police. So not only are they underpaid, but we're understaffed. So again, it goes back to my suggestion of maybe the Council of Ministers should come together and focus on priorities. I understand, I'm not saying to take money from different ministries, focus on helping each other out with simple things, because when the country is safe, tourists will come. Teat will be good. When the country is clean and the roads are good, tourists will come. That's the thing, that's the link, that's how it works in my head. I will acknowledge the fact that when the Minister of VSA spoke yesterday, at first I thought, it was very little coming, and what I saw from it was, well, it's little because we have a tight budget, right? We're constrained. How can we move forward? How can we do anything? But what the Minister of VSA did yesterday that I didn't see from everyone else is the fact that in order for you to be successful at your job, Minister, the Minister needs his staff, and he's empowering his staff that has been, kind of ignored for a long time. They haven't been able to have the tools they need to do their job. So I commend the Minister on that. But again, the Minister knows my concern is the fact that we have a societal issue where people are hurting, where there's a heavy reliance on assistance from the government, on understand, whether that is for mental health, whether that's for safe haven, whether that is for PP cards, where we all know there's a lot of money going in there. So how do I see the light at the end of the tunnel with the societal, the socioeconomic issues we have on this country? I'm going to save the rest for later. Thank you very much, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP De Wever, for your contribution to the discussion on the draft budget.